Albert, I must click-clack along. Kim, I hope you'll pitch in because we have a guy who is a show business legend waiting to go. He has a new book out. He has a career that spans nearly 70 years. I mean, just an amazing imprint on our culture he is responsible for. His new book is called Still Laughing, A Life in Comedy. He created Laugh In and a bunch of other stuff we'll ask him about. It's really an honor to have him join us. George Schlatter, everybody.
Nice
George,
thank you.
you are the real thing, my friend. It is really an honor to have you in. Look, Laugh In changed the game. But before Laugh In, this you mentioned in your book, you were a creature of Hollywood from, working at Ciro's nightclub to kind of getting into the world of a lot of those show business figures that we knew. This is before Laugh In was even an idea.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I worked in Vegas a lot. That was colorful, but that section of my life is not in the book that much.
That's for the next book, George?
Well, no, I don't think those stories will ever be told.
So, look,
all
you
are all dead, and I didn't do it. So the best left untold, on the advice of my wife.
Look, you produced before Laugh In now. I'm seeing Dinah Shore, Judy Garland, Jonathan Winters, Danny Thomas, and Steve Lawrence. Wow.
Yes. And with Jackie Gleason and Bob Hope, and there was a whole bunch of them, And I was very lucky to have been able to work with all of those people. Every one of them was an adventure.
Tell me about Laugh In and how that happened.
Accident. There's so many things in my career were accidents. And NBC had Monday night at 8 o'clock was a disaster. They had Lucille Ball and Gunsmoke were opposite them at Monday night at 8 o'clock. So NBC had nothing to put in there. And I said, well, I'll give you a show. And it was all young people. Nobody ever heard of anybody. And so we came in with this group of young character people. And since they had nothing else to put on, NBC wasn't really paying much attention. They knew they had to put something on at 8 o'clock. And we showed up with this group of funny, outrageous, attractive, irreverent, impudent, funny people. And we put it on the air. They weren't going to air it at first. They said, this isn't like a television show. I said, yeah, it's a new television show. But I mean, that speed and the blackouts and the sight gags and everything. So they put it on the air kind of reluctantly. And before they know it, by the third show, it kind of exploded. And then we got up to a 50 share. Well, I'm arrogant now, but if you can imagine me with a 50 share. Oh. They had all of these rules, and none of them applied to Laugh In. We broke every set of rules that they came up with. And it was a romp. It was a playpen for adults.
Yeah, it's odd how you took that moment in our culture and you really ran with it. You mentioned these performers. I mean, people like Judy Carn and Kim reminded me of Goldie Hawn. And, where did you find them? How did you know of them?
Well, it was all strange. Lily Tomlin had some failures, and she was leaving town. So she came for one last meeting with me, and she sat down in my office, and all of these characters appeared. And I said, I want you to do this show. And she said, which character? I said, I want you to do them all. Well, only because we developed that way of producing and editing. Carolyn Raskin, a brilliant woman, did all the editing. And we developed, and we could do all of Lily's characters. And then Goldie was a dancer. She didn't want to come to the meeting. She said, I'm not a comedian, I'm a dancer. So she came to this meeting, and we gave her an introduction of Dan Rowan. And she screwed it up so bad. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I'll do it again. I said, no, Goldie, that'll be just fine. And from then on, she never got to rehearse. But Artie Johnson came in with all these different characters. And Lily Tomlin and Goldie Hawn and Joanne Worley and Ruth Buzzy. Ruth Buzzy came in, and she was a wealth of characters. And so it was a lot of accident happened in Laugh In. And now today, it's very difficult because there's so many executives now. We only had to get over, the bodies of 2 or 3, but now there's a whole room full of people you have to get clearances from.
It's funny, you reminded me of something, George, which is that you made what Goldie Hawn did, like her screw-ups, you made those part of the show. That wasn't done really elsewhere at the time. You know, you would have retaken, but she was so adorable in the way she screwed up, and it was a part of the show regularly.
Yes, but the whole show was we would start out with the script, and then we would tape. And since we were on an early rate card, I could tape all night long, and we did. We taped till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would tape the script. And then if anything went wrong, that's what we used. And so Laugh-In was like a 5-car accident happening in front of you, and it was because NBC had nothing else to put on it. They put Laugh-In on the air out of desperation, and it took like 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks, and then when it hit, and then people started to come to it, got huge ratings. Well, you know, don't give me a huge rating like that. And we only had to go through like 1 or 2 executives at that time. Now to sell a show, you go through 10 or 12 people.
Yeah, you couldn't do anything quite as innovative. But no. Now you're right. George, explain to us the culture for some of the younger boys and girls, and for those of us who just may not remember. First of all, Rowan and Martin. It was Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Why Rowan and Martin? Who were they?
Well, this show that I was selling, right, that I had in my head, had no hosts. And so NBC and Timex, Jim Ellis, a wonderful man at Timex, said they would buy the show, but I had to have a host. That was the only thing traditional that I had to do, because the show originally was designed without a host. So anyhow, I went to Rowan and Martin, who were a great nightclub act. And they were straight, and they wore tuxedos, and they were older. And so we had them do the opening and the closing, and then some of the news items, and the rest of the show kind of happened around them. And so the show originally was designed without a host. And it would have worked, but it worked very well with Dan and Dick because they were older, and they let it happen. And,
yeah, oddly, they became sort of the rudder of the ship, you know.
Yes,
but yeah, as it listed from one side to the other, comedically, it was so much fun. There were a couple of big things on Laugh-In. Sammy Davis Jr. created this character in this moment where he just comes through the screen occasionally. I mean, it was wild, George. How did that happen?
Accident. You've got to, if I can give one word of advice to people working in comedy, treasure the accident. Sammy Davis was an old friend of mine. Oh, good. And he came there in the middle of the night one night about 11 or 12 o'clock, and we started talking. We were doing some things in the courtroom. And he said, "Do you remember Pigmeat Markham?" I said, "Oh, yeah, the black comic." He said, he's still alive. So we put Sammy in the courtroom. We put him in a black robe with a white wig, and he came through saying, "Order in the courtroom, here come the judge." Well, the next day everybody was talking about "Here come the judge" with Sammy Davis. That became a catchphrase. And by the way, we put that show on the air with Sammy doing "Here come the judge" blackouts. The next day, 2 days later, the Supreme Court came into the courtroom, and somebody in the back room said, "Here come the judge," and the courtroom laughed. It's the last laugh. I mean, the judges never got that much laugh until our recent adventures with Donald Trump. Now they're funny.
And there he is, Sammy Davis Jr. as that sort of judge character. But as I say, he would sometimes just like dance through the frame saying that.
Well, Sammy came in. See, the way we taped Laugh-In, it was all in bits and pieces. Sammy would come in and do 10 or 12 of those "Here Come the Judge" bits, and then we'd edit them into the show. So Laugh-In was largely an accident, looking for a place to happen. One of the accidents was Sammy coming in with "Here Come the Judge."
Would you call Laugh-In? Somebody says, "I love those old variety shows." I guess it was a variety show, right?
No, it was not.
Thank you, because it seems to occupy another kind of weird space. But what other genre would you apply? What other label would you apply it to it?
I would develop a category called accident.
Okay.
Laugh-In was an accident. I mean, one time, the second year, when Laugh-In was happening and I said, I need to do something that's different and explosive. And Paul Keyes, one of the writers, said he was very friendly with Richard Nixon. He said, "I can get Richard Nixon." I said, "Can you get him for me too?" I didn't like him anyhow, but I said, so Richard Nixon came in and we got him to say, "Sock it to me." He said, "Sock it to me." No, Mr. Nixon, just smile. This comedy thing is new to me. Sock it to me. Yeah. So anyhow, we took him about 5 takes and we got Richard Nixon saying, "Sock it to me." We put that on the air and people could not believe Richard Nixon, who was a cube, I mean, he was so square, to him come on a hip comedy show was unheard of. But
it was good for Nixon. It was good for Nixon because for all the reasons you just mentioned. I mean, he was viewed as this stiff guy, really not liked by a lot of people. He was divisive. I
He
mean,
said it
now he
helped
would
get him.
blend in, but
He said it helped get him elected, and I've had to live with that.
well.
But uh,
But that Sock It To Me was something else. You had people come on. They would sometimes be celebrities or, like, as you just said, Nixon, politician, and they would do that one thing, Sock It To Me. How did that happen?
well, it happened because nobody wanted to do the show. We had no money because the only way I got the show on the air was to do it for nothing. So we couldn't get people to do the show. So we would stop them in the hall coming back from the Johnny Carson show, and we'd ask them to do something. And none of them knew the show or wanted to do it, like John Wayne. John Wayne came on and he said, "I'm not gonna do that show. Those crazy people." That's what we put on the air. So we put on the air all of these big stars coming back from the Johnny Carson show, saying they weren't going to do the show, and that's what helped us.
Go ahead,
See,
Kim.
and
Mr.
that's
Schlatter, I saw that you, and not to bring the mood down or anything, but I saw that you were the person that delivered the eulogy at Frank Sinatra's funeral, and I was reading that you call that the most difficult moment of your life. So I wanted to see if you could tell us about that and how it all came to be.
well, Frank Sinatra was in my career periodically, moments all the way from I was like 18 years old, and I got along with Frank Sinatra because I could make him laugh. He was feared by people for this image of this man, but so I made him laugh all the time. I would do terrible things to him, and then he would laugh. It was dangerous, but it was funny. So finally, when he was having the funeral, his wife called and wanted me to do a eulogy. I said, "Barbara, there's no way I'm going to do a eulogy." She said, "You must do it." So I said, "Well, okay, I'll do it." But I didn't want to have it. Eventually, they told me that I had to do this eulogy, and I was going to follow the bishop. Well, to do a eulogy for Frank Sinatra was in itself a challenge, but to follow a bishop. So I came out and I said, the bishop introduced me, and I said, "Thank you, Your Honor." She got a big, big laugh in the courtroom, right? And so from there on, the whole funeral became kind of a party, and Frank would have loved it. But my relationship with him was based upon me making him laugh. The bishop didn't laugh, but Frank did.
Well, it's just your career is amazing. You know, George. We talk a lot about laughing. I'm glad Kim brought up the Frank Sinatra thing, and you created the TV series Real People, and
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yes, I did. The shortest series in the history of television. It was another one of my adventures. And you understand, with laughing that huge, I could have sold them anything, right? And so I came in. I said, "I have this idea to do this show that nothing makes sense, and everything was there was a Moog synthesizer was used, synthetic sound, and anyway, and this group of young character people, and so we came on the air, and they sold it to Bristol Myers. We had 3 or 4 major sponsors saw the pilot, and they all loved it. Everybody loved Turn On, and so we went on the air, and a guy in Cleveland wanted to keep Peyton Place on the air. And so he started calling stations from New York all the way out. Every time he'd call a station and say, "We can't let this happen." Nobody had seen the show, but they were canceling it one station at a time. So by the time we got to California, it had been canceled. And I thought that was funny. Of course, I thought everything was funny. And so when we went on the air, I said, "Okay, great. We'll cancel it after the first show." They said, "No, we're serious. It's off." And they said, not only that, but to get any of the money they owed me, I had to promise never to air it. So the show never aired until recently. 2 young scoundrels found in the archives the tapes of Laugh of Turn On. And so now they've put that together, and I think Turn On's going to finally, 50 years later, appear. It was an adventure. It was upside down television. It was
well, you also did. You know, George, I have to just say, you did the first ever all black variety show with Red Fox and Pearl Bailey. Tell us about that. I mean, you know, you were really you were a groundbreaker, pal.
See, I broke. I was successful by breaking rules, not by obeying them. And we did a burlesque show with Danny Thomas, and we did an all-black show. We also did a show called The Shape of Things, which was all women, and that upset the network. They said, "How can you do that without any men?" I said, "We can do that very well." So Shape of Things was there, and we did Children Are People, with the show with all children. See, what I miss now is a show does well, and then they say, "Let's do it again and again and again." I said, "A show does well, let's do something different every week," and that really was my success. was kind of based on that, and an irreverence, an impudence, a lack of conformity. All of those things that are reasons to get fired today are the reasons why I was fired 50 years ago.
You know, I got to know Joanne Worley a little bit through charity that we
Wonderful.
were both involved in. It was an abused women's shelter, and I would talk to her and see her. And I think I saw her again at the memorial service for Gary Owens, actually, who was part
Yes,
of your
yes.
show. Yeah,
Well,
you must have been there
Gary,
too, George. Yeah, yeah,
Jo-
yeah. I think.
Joanne Worley was an adventure. I mean, she was bigger than life, and she came in and would just kind of take over. So she had her own identity on the show. And Gary Owens was straight. He was a radio announcer, but I needed somebody to do straight introductions. And so we went to Gary Owens, and he stood there later that same evening. And Gary was a straight announcer that stood in a booth over at the side. That's the only thing he ever did because he was doing a radio show early in the morning and couldn't be there when we taped. So Gary Owens was another one. Judy Carn was one. Of course, Goldie was magic. You know, Goldie came on and just lit up the screen, and she had a reputation of being this dizzy blonde. She was as bright as anybody I've ever worked with. But part of part of our chore was to break Judy, you know, to make Goldie laugh. And Lily was another one. It was a
Yeah, of
time
course,
when
Lily.
nothing was happening
Yeah.
like right now. See, there's nothing on the air right now that really makes you laugh. Maybe the you know trial with the. But
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not supposed to. But if I was on the air today, I would be having such a ball with this trial that's going on. You
well,
know.
the political stuff that you did, George, and we've got to wrap up here pretty quick. But the political stuff that you did was uh, was all part of an ongoing controversy in primetime television. Somehow, like for example, the Smothers Brothers at the time did a lot of anti-war stuff on their show at CBS, and they were canceled. They got into big things with the network. You also did stuff I'd laugh in, but
Yes.
somehow you were able to navigate the controversies and encase them with enough comedy, I guess, maybe to get away with it.
Lying, lying helped. They would say you can't do that, and I would promise. While I was negotiating with them on what I couldn't do, I was doing three things they also said I couldn't do. I think it was an adventure. I miss the adventure today. I mean, seriously. I mean, if I was on the air today, I would be having such a ball with Trump. I mean, it would just be a treasure trove because when you have the shots of him playing golf, you remember that when he had diarrhea, unbelievable. I would use that, and then all the things. I mean, Trump is the subject of great comedy. I wish they'd focus more on that. Well, we will.
Yeah.
If he ever gets elected, we're going to have a great period
Well,
for comedy. Bad
they
period.
had a look. They had a 4 year field day with him comedically. The Daily Show did a bunch of stuff. There was even something called the President Show, which was really
Yes, yes.
funny.
We do it. We need
Um,
it now. We need
yeah,
it
no,
now.
it's true. But George, your work is transformational. I mean, really, you did change show business and television in an extremely important way, and you launched so many people. We didn't even touch on, Tiny Tim, who appeared on your show, and Lily Tomlin's a career being introduced to America the way she was. You mentioned her in passing, but I mean, these were, truly great comedic figures and also performers.
I would love. I'm getting ready to do another shot. I'm seriously thinking about crawling out of my crypt and coming back for one more big shot because there's so much out there to make fun of, and nobody's laughing. I mean, the shows are all quiet. They're all dark. The comics are quiet, and they're either dirty or loud, not making any sense. But now, if we were on the air now, I would be having a ball. I would, just these hearings are enough. So
Yeah, well, you can, and George, you've created so much in your career. You could get a meeting
thank you.
anywhere and create whatever you want. I love that we
Thank
got a
you.
couple of minutes with you. Here's the book, Still Laughing: A Life in Comedy, from the creator of Laugh-In, George Schlatter. It's truly an honor to have you on, my friend, and I look forward
Thank you.
to.
The book was an adventure. They said, this isn't like a real bio. And I said, no, it's not at all. And so selling the book, we did it, we published it ourselves because everybody was kind of doubtful whether or not this was really a book. What it is a series of very funny episodes in my long and shady career, but it all came together like a series of comedy blackouts. And I had
Well,
a
I
ball.
ca-
I'm
well,
amazed that many people are buying it. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to getting it myself. I haven't yet picked it up, but I can't wait to get into it. I love this kind of thing.
I go door to door. I'll be over tomorrow with a copy.
My door is always open for George Schlatter. I promise you.
Signed copy using my real name.
Okay. Love spending time with you, my friend. Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon. George Schlatter, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.